Giving God all the honor. No church I'd rather be at. No church I'd rather be at. To the incomparable Pastor Tommy L. Robinson, to Pastor Doan. And whoo, man. We come every Sunday. You looking for a church home? And to our deacons, to our staff, to all of our youth that are here. Amen. Amen. I'm not going to be before you long. If you have your Bible, I invite you to turn with me to the book of Exodus. The book of Exodus. Exodus, the 3rd chapter, beginning in the 1st verse. And we invite all those who are able, and only who are able, to stand with us as we reverence the reading of God's holy word.
Thank you, Lord Jesus. Hallelujah. Yes, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah.
Yes, Lord.
The Bible reads this way out of course, the King James Version. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the backside of the desert, and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush was burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Draw not nigh hither. Put off thy shoes off thy feet. For the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by the reason of their taskmasters. For I know their sorrows. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land unto a land and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me. And I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppress them. Come now therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And Moses said unto God, Who am I, that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, Certainly,
yes, Lord. Yes,
I will be with thee.
Yes, Lord.
And this shall be a token unto thee, that I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, ye shall serve God upon this mountain. This is the word of God for the people of God. And the other guys may be seated in the presence of the Lord. I'd like to talk to you all briefly from the title, the topic, the thought, whatever you'd like to call it, aftermath. Aftermath. Let us pray. God, we thank you for this assembly of believers. We thank you for who you are and what you've done in our lives. We thank you for what you have not allowed to happen. God, we thank you for the service thus far. We ask at this time that you clear all our hearts and minds, that we may readily receive your word. Speak now, Lord, for your servants are listening. It's in your many names that we pray. Amen. I'd like to begin this morning by inviting you all to think about one old song that you still enjoy listening to. One old song that you still enjoy listening to. I know for me, one old song that I still love to listen to is Vida La Vida by Coldplay, released in June of 2008. From the first time I heard it as a kid, I've been captivated by this award-winning track. There's lots to be enjoyed about this song, from its instrumentals to the vocal abilities of the singer and beyond, but one thing I've always appreciated is the story that the song tells. Vita La Vida is delivered from the perspective of a former king, fallen from grace, now living as a bottom feeder in a society that he used to rule over. Some of the song lyrics read like this: I used to rule the world. Seeds would rise when I gave the word. Now in the morning I sleep alone, sweep the streets that I used to own. I used to roll the dice, feel the fear in my enemy's eyes. Listen as the crowd would sing. Now the old king is dead, long live the king. 1 minute I held the key. Next the walls were closed on me. As seen through the lyrics, the king has hit rock bottom. Coldplay has painted a picture for us of this king that has fallen from grace, gone from hero to zero, from reigning to rejected. Because somewhere along his path, what had been going right suddenly went wrong. Amen. There was a misstep. An occurrence took place. Something happened or didn't happen. And as a result, this king had sunken into a season of his life in which he was left with the void of everything that he lost. He was left with the frustration of every past mistake that cost him his kingdom. He was left with the loneliness from everyone that left him behind. And he was left with the pain of knowing that his life, as he had known it, was now over. Amen. The king was left in what I like to refer to as the aftermath. And just like the king, some of us this morning have gone through this past week, these past months, or even these past years, and we have been in the aftermath. We find ourselves in the fallout of the incident, the fallout of the mistake, the fallout of the tragedy that has turned our world upside down. We have the weight of after effects of a previous chapter pressing down on us. We are experiencing backlash from our past that is blocking our path forward. Perhaps someone this morning is seeking a new beginning after things took a turn for the worse in your life. Amen. After the unwise financial decisions. After we got linked up with the wrong people. After we fell into temptation. After the person that we always counted on let us down. After we were told some news that left us in disarray. And if you're someone that may identify as being in the aftermath, if you can relate to the struggles of the king in the Coldplay song, then you this morning are somebody that Moses could empathize with. Amen. You see, the journey of Moses begins during the first chapter of the book of Exodus, when during a time of Egyptian rule, the Pharaoh at that time made a declaration that any male that was born among the Israelites was to be killed. And this was bad news for Moses, he was a male Israelite. However, baby Moses had his life spared and his destiny altered because of a pair of amazing women.
All right now.
The first woman who helped preserve his life is his mother. You see, she wasn't a big fan of this whole idea of her son being executed, so she decides to intervene. At first, she tries to hide Moses, but after 3 months, he's become too big and too loud to go unnoticed. So she decides to make a basket to place Moses in. She then goes down to the river, releases baby Moses, and hopes for the best. Later on, Pharaoh's daughter comes down to that same river, and you guessed it, she comes across Moses. When Pharaoh's daughter encounters weeping baby Moses laying innocently in the basket, her heart melts, and she decides to take him in as her own. Amen. Moses' sister Miriam, who had been watching throughout this whole process to see what was going to happen to her baby brother, then steps in and approaches Pharaoh's daughter and volunteers to find her a Hebrew woman to nurse Moses. Miriam then, of course, chooses their mother to nurse Moses. Amen. The finesse is real, y'all. Pharaoh's daughter agrees, and she even pays Moses' mother for her services. The mother then nurses Moses until he gets older. And Moses' mother then returns him to Pharaoh's daughter to be raised. And Moses, after avoiding death and being able to spend his infancy with his birth mother, is raised by Pharaoh's daughter as an Egyptian. Yeah, and not just any Egyptian, but as a part of the royal family. Yeah. Moses had it made. He lived luxuriously. If Moses were to live now, he'd be that kid with the Xbox in his room, with the flat screen TV. He got to go to the well-funded private schools with the other Egyptians. Things seemed to work out quite well for Moses.
Amen.
However, Moses had a conflict. You see, even though he was living a good life and he had the privilege of living as Egyptian royalty, Moses knew that beneath it all, he was an Israelite. And as an Israelite brother, the oppression that Moses saw the Egyptians inflicting upon the Israelites did not sit well with him. Moses was stuck in the middle, at a crossroads, because he loved his Egyptian family members, but he's tired of turning on the news and seeing the tyranny and the brutality of the nation of Israel, his true people, are enduring. It all comes to a head one day when Moses witnesses an Israelite getting jumped on the west end by an Egyptian. Moses decides he's had it. He looks to his left, he looks to his right, and then he kills the Egyptian in cold blood and buries him in the sand. Moses decides that even though it's risky, he's going to take a stand for the Israelites. That he's going to be the change that he wants to see in the world. And the next day, Moses is strolling through town and sees two Israelites beefing. And he steps in and tries to play peacemaker. But the Israelites aren't having any of it. They respond by telling Moses to fall back. They let him know that ain't nobody trying to hear all that. And then one of them says, "So Moses, you gonna do us like you did that Egyptian?" And when Moses hears this, he is 100% shook. Moses didn't know that anybody knew what he did. But not only did these two Israelites know, not only the folks at the barbershop knew, but everybody knew. Everybody, including Pharaoh. And when Pharaoh hears the news, he makes an order for Moses to be killed. Moses knows that Pharaoh ain't playing. And he flees to Midian for his safety. Moses goes into hiding, thinking that this will all blow over, that Pharaoh will come around since basically they're family. But after a few months, he's still in exile. A year goes by, and Moses is still alienated from his family and community. This year turns to 5 years, and the rift is as strong as ever. A decade passes, and then another, and then another. And the hard feelings remain. The aftermath of Moses' murder would hang over him like a dark cloud for not 10, not 20, not 30, not 35, but 40 years. And during these 40 years of living estranged from his family, the king of Egypt, who raised and was a father figure to Moses his entire life, dies having never been reconciled with Moses. Scripture tells us that Moses, at 80 years old, after being excommunicated from his family, after having the Israelites who he sought to defend and deliver reject him, after losing his status, losing his relationships, losing his career, and whatever else he may have attained while in Egypt, is now tending to the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law. And it's important to understand that Moses wasn't tending to the flock of Jethro as a favor. He wasn't trying to get brownie points with his in-law. This was his job. This is what his life had become. Shepherding over a flock that wasn't even his own. When I read how hard the backlash of this fallout hit Moses, I was baffled. But what hit me even deeper was what the text says next. You see, in Exodus chapter 2, Moses committed murder and hid the body. In Exodus chapter 2, his family put a hit out on him and he had to flee town. In Exodus chapter 2, Moses' friends in Egypt started leaving him on red every time he tried to hit them up. In chapter 2, the Israelites told Moses to go kick rocks. In chapter 2, Moses had to start working a dead-end job. In chapter 2, Moses saw his whole world come crashing down. But the second verse of chapter 3 tells us that the angel of the Lord appeared unto him. This is deep, because it reminds us of all of us that no matter what our after is, no matter what our past consists of, no matter what went down in chapter 2, God is still checking for us in chapter 3. Because regardless of what happened in your last chapter, God will show up for you. Regardless of what you said during that argument, God will show up for you. Regardless of what's on your transcript, what's on your criminal record, what's on your credit score, what's on your phone history, God will show up for you. No matter who deleted your number, God will show up for you. God still got your back. Scripture tells us that the Lord appeared unto Moses in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. This is one of the most famous and memorable moments in the life of Moses. When God uses the burning bush to call it to Moses. However, we got to know the details of how this all takes place. Recently, one thing I realized when reading this passage that I never caught in all my years of being in church was why the bush gave up to Moses. I always was under the impression that Moses was captivated solely by the fact that the bush is inflamed. However, it's more nuanced than that. There's more to the story. In verse 3, Moses said that he will turn aside to see the great sight of why the bush is not burnt. He recognizes that the fact that the bush encountered a fire that should have destroyed it, but yet was still standing, was something to be appreciated.
Amen.
Moses knew what it was like to be under fire. Moses knew what it was like to have everything that meant everything that was important to him go up in smoke. And because of this, Moses knew that survival was something to be celebrated. Moses understood the true miracle of the burning bush. As explained by the end of verse 2 when the text says that the bush was burned with fire but was not consumed. The Bible teaches us that the bush is miraculous because it had a catastrophic disaster but was spared from destruction. This bush is a picture of how God works in our lives. How we often go through circumstances that look to tear us apart, yet God steps in and still holds us together. Naturally, when we are in a Moses moment, we tend to be preoccupied with who and what has burned us. But we ought to make sure that we don't allow our pain to distract us from God's protection. We ought to always have an appreciation for the grace and the covering that God has placed over our lives. And our testimony ought to be that I've been hurt in some unforgettable ways, but I'm not consumed. My life may never be the same again, but I'm not consumed. I may be dealing with some trauma that nobody else understands, but I'm not consumed because God has been keeping me. God has been sustaining me. God has been preserving me. God has been delivering me. And for that and that alone, He's worthy to be praised. For that and that alone, I'll come to Sunday after Sunday church when I got no money in my pocket because I am not consumed by what has been done. I am not consumed by what happened to me in 2018. I am not consumed by what happened on my job. I'm not consumed by who walked out. I am not consumed. Moses takes notice of the bush. And after he turns his attention to what God has set before him, God then begins to speak a word over the life of Moses. This is important because it reveals the truth that God oftentimes will wait until we come to a place in our lives where we turn to Him before He calls us to our new season. You see, for Moses, it took for him being an 80-year-old man, having lost his family and possessions, doing yard work for his father-in-law, for him to turn and submit himself to God. For some of us, God has dislodged us from where we were. We have been driven away from what was secure and comfortable. And we've been placed in a situation that has us feeling anxious, unsettled, and hopeless. And since this happened, we may have felt confused, we may have panicked, we may have questioned our faith. But it's very possible that God may have flipped our script so that we will see the burning bushes that exist in our lives.
Well,
We see Moses shift his focus to God.
well,
And then God calls out to Moses. He tells him to take off his shoes because he's on holy ground. He proclaims that he is the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. But then the text tells us that Moses hides his face. This is significant because it shows a change in Moses from chapter 2 to chapter 3. Watch out. In chapter 2, Moses decided that he wanted to be the liberator for the nation of Israel. However, at no point in Scripture do we see Moses seeking God's guidance. At no point do we see him discern the Lord's will. At no point do we see him looking for intercession or counsel before he acts. We simply see Moses do what some of us have done or are currently doing in our lives. Acting upon our own will and then relying on God to do the rest of the work. In chapter 3, Moses is hiding his face out of fear and reverence for God. Because while being in the aftermath, Moses developed a proper perspective and approach to his relationship with God. When we find ourselves in times and phases in which a cloud from our past is hanging over our head and won't go away, and our future is uncertain, we ought to become intentional about seeking God's will. We ought to develop a deeper fear and reverence for God. We ought to develop a heightened sense of obedience toward the Lord. This is a crucial step because Scripture tells us that when God sees that Moses possesses the humility and respect that was absent in the previous chapter, he ordains Moses to be the deliverer of Israel. It's when we have grown in how we view God and deepened our desire to serve him that he can elevate us on our journey.
Yes, yes.
God informs Moses of the task that awaits him at the end of his statement by telling him, after he gives all these words, he says, I will send you. And these 4 words that God speaks to Moses are empowering for those of us who have a past that we're not proud of. For those of us who have some issues that we wrestle with. Because this lets us know that we worship a God who will send us in spite of our sin.
Amen.
That we can live with a new level of assurance knowing that God will anoint the imperfect. God will favor the flawed. God will walk with the wounded. God, and because of his grace and mercy, our dysfunction doesn't disqualify us. That God specializes in choosing the weak things of this world to confound the wise. And as I hear myself say this, I know someone may feel like Moses felt in the text. We may be unsure of how God can use us when we know that deep down, our faith isn't what it should be. Our relationships with the people around us aren't what they should be. Our self-image is not what it should be. And we look at our lives, when we put the mirror up to ourselves, we don't feel we're capable of fulfilling the calling. Moses responds to God selecting and sending him by saying, who am I that I should go into Pharaoh and that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? Moses' question is honest, it's fair, and it's relevant. Because there are Moses all over this church and all over this world. And God responds by revealing a powerful and uplifting truth to Moses and anyone else who finds himself in the aftermath. Moses poses the question, and God doesn't disagree. He doesn't downplay the difficulty of Moses' situation. He doesn't invalidate Moses' insecurity and feelings. He simply replies to Moses by saying, certainly I will be with thee. God makes the point that he has a presence that outweighs our position. That God simply being with us is what empowers us to do the impossible. God being with us is what enables the foundations of our lives to shift. God being with us is what sparks transformation on the inside of us. Because God is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all that we can ask or think, because he will stand by us in the aftermath. And when God stands by, he compensates for all our cracks. When God stands by, he overpowers all of our obstacles. When God stands by, he tears through what has us tied up. When God stands by, he steps over what we've been stumbling through. And I heard that when he stood by Joseph, a convict became a king. I heard that when he stood by Hannah, barrenness became a birth. I heard that when he stood by Rahab, a harlot became a hero. I heard when he stood by Jonah, a rebellion became a revival. I heard when he stood by Paul, iniquities became evangelism. I heard when he stood by Bartimaeus, blindness became a breakthrough. I heard when he turned by Lazarus, a funeral became a family reunion. Is there anybody in the house this morning who can testify that the reason you made it through is because God stood by? The reason you didn't go out in 2018 was because God stood by. And as I close, I look at the end of verse 12. God tells Moses that when he has brought the people out of Egypt, that they are to serve him upon this mountain, referring to Mount Horeb. This perplexed me at first because I didn't understand the importance. Why did it have to be that mountain? Why was this so critical and specific?
All right.
So I did some research on Mount Horeb, like Pastor Robinson told me, and I actually became even more confused. You see, I learned that Horeb has a root meaning of desolation or emptiness.
Lord have mercy.
So why would God want them to worship him on a mountain that signifies emptiness?
Lord have mercy.
But then I learned something. I discovered that the mountain that Moses and God are talking on top of is called Mount Horeb in chapter 3. But when Moses comes back after delivering the Israelites, the mountain has a new name. This is the mountain where Moses receives the 10 Commandments.
Wow.
This made everything come together to show that God will not only stand by us as we press forward in our lives, but he will take the places of pain, emptiness, sorrow, and misery in our lives and rebrand them into places of purpose. And I know that this idea might not make sense to somebody. So I'm going to close by trying to make it plain by explaining a story about my friend Charlie.
All right, Charlie.
All right.
You see, Charlie grew up like a normal kid, went to school like a normal kid, had a family like a normal kid, but Charlie was different. And the reason Charlie was different is that when Charlie was very young, his arm was amputated.
Wow.
He had to have his arm cut off. And all through school, because kids are trifling, he was often picked on and bullied and pushed in lockers because of his disability. And when Charlie got into about the 6th grade, Charlie decided that he was tired. He was tired of getting beat up and picked on. He was tired of getting laughed at and humiliated at school. So Charlie went down to his local dojo to learn how to fight and defend himself. Charlie walked in and he encountered the sensei. And he said, "Sensei, I've been getting bullied a lot at school. And I just want you to show me how to defend myself." And Sensei said, "Okay, I can teach you how to fight. But I need you to do exactly what I told you to do." They began, and Sensei showed Charlie a move. Charlie said, "Okay, this move is pretty good." And the entire session, Charlie practiced that one move. The next day, Charlie came back for the second session. And Sensei said, "All right, you know what to do. Start working on the move." And Charlie spent the entire session doing that move. And this went on for 2 weeks. And Charlie said, "Look, this is a scam. Do you only know one move? How come I've been coming here every day for 2 weeks, and every time I do the same move the entire time?" And Sensei says, "Look, just trust the process. Just work on the move." And it works through the session. At the end of the session, Sensei says, "I think you're ready for your first tournament." And then Charlie was like, whoa. All right, no, stop. All right, I don't think you understand. First of all, I've only been training for 2 weeks, and I only had this one move. I'm going to go to this tournament and get my butt whooped. And if I'm going to get whooped, I might as well get whooped at school, or at least I don't have to pay to get whooped. People don't have to watch me get whooped. So, no thanks, Sensei. And Charlie said, no, trust me, it's going to be fine. And they go. And Charlie wakes up the morning of the tournament and he is terrified. He walks into the gym, he sees the lights on bright, he sees kids warming up that are bigger and stronger and that have 2 arms and that know more than one move, and he's horrified. And he steps onto the mat to face his first opponent. And Charlie has sweat dripping down his face. And Charlie looks across the ring at a guy who's bigger, more experienced, and stronger than he is. And the fight starts. And his opponent approaches him. And Charlie does the only thing he knows how to do, which was the one move that Sensei showed him. But then something interesting happened. The move worked, and Charlie won. And Charlie advanced to the second round. But in the second round, Charlie faced a fighter who was even bigger, stronger, quicker, and more experienced than the first one. And Charlie was like, "All right, well, now this is the problem, because the first guy was kind of sorry, but this guy is even bigger and stronger than that guy. And he probably saw me do that one move, so that's not going to be able to work this time." So Charlie steps onto the mat against his opponent. The match starts. Charlie's grimacing and flinching because he's already scared, and his opponent comes from across the room. And Charlie does the only thing he knows how to do, which was the one move that Sensei showed him. But the move worked again, and Charlie advanced to the championship round. And Charlie was like, "What is happening?" But the championship round, that's when the game stopped. You see, that's when he had to face the #1 ranked fighter in their age class.
Amen.
This kid had never lost. This kid was on another level. He was a Pastor Robinson of karate. This was no joke. And when he gets onto the mat, he looks across the ring, he knows he's about to get whooped. He already told his mom, he's like, "Look, just put the hospital number, type it in before I get on the mat. So that way when this goes down, you can just call, put it out the way, all right? Come on." So he steps onto the mat, everyone gathers around the ring, the trophy presented, it's brought out to be presented to the winner. And then the match starts. And the guy is doing jump kicks and coming at Charlie. And Charlie does the only thing he knows how to do. The one move that Sensei showed him. But it worked. And he handed this kid his first loss ever. Everyone erupts in applauses and cheers. And Charlie walks home carrying the trophy in his one arm. Charlie has a big smile on his face because he didn't even think he'd make it out the first round. He thought he'd be in the hospital by now. But he's walking home with the trophy. But then Charlie's smile, Charlie's elation turns to sadness. And Charlie goes home and he cries for the rest of the night. Because Charlie realizes that the only reason that he won those matches is because nobody wanted to be the kid that beat up the other kid with one arm. That he won out of sympathy. And Charlie's embarrassed. He feels like a fool. He goes to bed, he crawls up to sleep. But the next morning, that sadness turns to rage. And Charlie goes down to that dojo, he slams the door open, and he says, Sensei. And then Sensei's like, what's up, champ? I saw you won the tournament yesterday. He's like, no, don't even try all that. I don't know what happened. I know that everybody just let me win because I only have one arm. And you better start explaining yourself, since I'm going to use this one move that you showed me and whoop your behind. And the sensei just laughed and he said, Charlie, nobody lets you win. The reason that nobody can beat you during the tournament is because the only way to stop that move is to grab your other arm. See, what Charlie thought made him weak and thought made him inadequate was what got him a victory. In this season of your life, everything that you thought made you weak and thought made you worthless, God's about to rebrand it. Every shortcoming you've been criticized for, God's about to rebrand it. As you find yourself to sleep at night, God's about to rebrand it. Everything that was meant for your evil, God's about to rebrand it for your good. Everything God used to write you off, God's about to rebrand it because the sensei is in your corner. And he won't let you lose. Is there anybody here who knows I've got the victory? I've got the victory in my household. I've got the victory on my job. I've got the victory at school. I've got the victory with my health. And everything I went through, every pain, all the time I spent in Jethro's yard is going to glorify one name. The name of the one who sets the captives free. The name of the one that gives sight to the blind. The name of the one that one Friday night went up a hill called Calvary. He stayed there on Friday while they put a nail in his hand and a nail in his side. He stayed there on Friday while they whooped on his horse. And he died till Satan was satisfied. He died while heaven was glorified. He stayed there all night Friday night. He stayed there all day Saturday. He stayed there all night Saturday. But early one Sunday morning, he got up with all power in his hand. With all things work together for the good of them that love God. Goodbye, New Hampton Baptist Church. And the Lord bless you real good. For everything you came in here worrying about, God's getting ready to get ready to rebrand it. I have some part of my life, but it's getting rebranded. People won't be off, but it's getting rebranded. I almost gave up, but it's getting rebranded. Because in this season, God's getting ready to turn it around. Hey! You don't know the hell he brought me out of. You don't know how many times I wanted to give up. You don't know how close I came. You don't know what's trying to block me. You don't know what's trying to stop me. You don't know what's going to pump me out.